Childhood should be sacred, a time of laughter, curiosity, and innocence. A place where safety wraps around you like sunlight. But in Pakistan, that sanctuary is fragile, and for too many children, it doesn't exist at all. Child sexual abuse in Pakistan is not rare, it is not extraordinary. It is woven into the very fabric of our society, into homes, madrassas, classrooms, workplaces, even shrines. The predators are not monsters hiding in the dark. They are familiar faces: fathers, uncles, cousins, neighbors, teachers, peers. And the theft is not only physical, it is psychological, spiritual, and generational. A child learns early that love and harm can come from the same hands. That confusion corrodes their psyche. They ask, how can the one I trust most also be the one who destroys me? When that trust is broken, something collapses inside, and it doesn't heal easily.
The statistics are harrowing. Sahil's cruel numbers 2023 documented 4,253 children abused in that year alone. That's about 11 children every single day. In the first half of 2025, the figure was already 1956 cases, roughly one child abused every 2 hours. Of those, nearly half were sexual assaults. These are only the reported cases. Many more vanish into silence. Families face stigma, communities discourage exposure, police discourage FIRs, and the victims aren't faceless. They are 2 years old, 7, 12, 15. They're boys and girls. And the perpetrators are really strangers. They're the people children know. This is why it cuts so deep. It is betrayal from within, not attack from outside.
And the effects are devastating. A survivor carries the abuse long after the bruises fade. Shame plants itself like a parasite. Children internalize guilt that never belonged to them. They learn to mistrust their own memories. They grow up anxious, depressed, often unable to form healthy intimacy. Their bodies became battlefields: chronic stomach pain, migraines, insomnia, panic attacks, autoimmune disorders. Some numb themselves with addiction. Others shut down completely. A survivor from Kasur told BBC Urdu, "I thought I was the only one. I thought something was wrong with me." That loneliness is perhaps the cruelest theft. When every child thinks they are alone in their suffering, predators win. But the truth is, this is not isolated, it is an epidemic. Every day, everywhere. And until we face it, the cycle will continue. When Pakistanis hear child abuse, they imagine a stranger lurking in an alley. But Sahil's research shows the reality. The vast majority of perpetrators are people the child knows. Abuse happens in homes, schools, madrassas. It happens with uncles, cousins, stepfathers, employers. For most, brick kiln laborers in Punjab, child domestic workers in Karachi and Islamabad, Khwaja Sira children thrown out of homes, disabled children in rural Sindh. These children are already invisible. Their abuse rarely reaches headlines, let alone the police. They carry pain in silence, and society looks away.
Geography also affects visibility. Punjab accounts for nearly 80% of reported cases. Sindh for 12, while Balochistan and KP report fewer. Not because abuse is less there, but because documentation is weaker. Silence is thicker. But silence cannot erase reality. In Mansehra, a madrasa cleric raped a 12-year-old boy. In Haripur, a visually impaired 5-year-old was abused by his madrasa teacher. In Karachi, A man was arrested after abusing nearly 100 children over 9 years, filming them for blackmail. Each case broke through the silence only because of exposure. Countless others remain hidden.
Madrasas hold particular risk. More than 2 million children study in madrasas across Pakistan. For many families, these schools are the only option. They offer free education and food. But investigations like France 24's 2025 expose show how widespread abuse can be inside these institutions. The reverence given to clerics makes disclosure nearly impossible. A survivor told Dawn, "I wanted to tell my father, but he said my teacher is like my father. Who would believe me?" Reverence becomes a predator's shield.
Feudal structures play their role too. Tenant families report landlords abusing children as a form of punishment or control. Families are silenced with threats or hush money. One Sindhi father told Geo News, "They said, 'Take money, end the case.' When I refused, the whole village turned against me." Abuse here is political, tied to land, class, and power.
Even sacred spaces are not safe. In 2020, reports surfaced of a Sindh peer abusing children inside his shrine. Families had brought them for blessings, only to have that trust desecrated. When spaces of healing themselves are unsafe, where can children go?
This is the landscape. Abuse is not hidden in shadows. It happens in broad daylight, in spaces we revere. It thrives not because it is rare, but because shame, silence, and power protect it.
Kasur is Pakistan's scar. When people hear child abuse in this country, they often think of Kasur first. Because in 2018, the body of 7-year-old Zainab Ansari was found in a garbage heap. She had been raped and strangled. The nation erupted. Streets filled, hashtags trended, politicians rushed to speak. For once, the silence cracked. But here's the truth. Zainab was not the first, not the only, and not the last. She became a symbol because she was the child we could no longer pretend not to see. But Kasur had already been infamous years earlier. Between 2006 and 2014, more than 280 children were systematically abused in the largest child pornography ring South Asia had ever seen. Predators filmed themselves violating children, circulated the videos, and blackmailed families. Everyone knew, the community whispered. Police turned a blind eye, politicians did nothing. A father later told The Guardian, "They said they would kill my son if I spoke. I stayed silent and my child suffered." Silence in Kasur wasn't accidental. It was enforced.
Zainab's death did lead to something tangible, the Zainab Alert, Response and Recovery Act of 2020. It promised that missing children would trigger alerts across police, media, and mobile networks. On paper, it looked like progress, but in practice, families still report delays. Police still refuse to register FIRs. One father told Al Jazeera, "We begged them for help. They said, 'Go home, she probably ran away.'" The law exists, but its machinery doesn't move with urgency. Children's lives are still treated as disposable. And Kasur was never alone. In Karachi, a man was arrested in 2025 for abusing nearly 100 children over 9 years old, luring them with small bribes and filming the assaults. In Haripur, a madrasa teacher assaulted a visually impaired 5-year-old. In Mansehra, a cleric raped his 12-year-old student. These cases are not isolated events. They are symptoms of a nationwide epidemic. The only difference is whether they make the news.
And here's the part that haunts me. Outrage is selective. Zainab became a symbol because she was the ideal victim, young, pious female from a family who refused to stay silent. friend who's literally a child. But where was that outrage for the boys in Kasur whose abuse was filmed and sold? For the Khwaja Sira children whose suffering doesn't even enter reports? For the disabled children whose pain is written off as fate? Our empathy is stratified. Some children's pain matters, others remain invisible. That selective outrage has a psychosocial cost. Survivors who don't fit the perfect victim mold often internalize the message that their pain is less real, less valid. Boys grow up thinking they should have been strong enough to fight it off. Girls are told their bodies are spoiled, their lives are ruined. Khwaja Sira children are told they deserve it. And it is that hierarchy of empathy itself that is a form of violence.
Kasur is not an anomaly, it is a mirror. It shows us everything: systematic abuse, community complicity, selective outrage, and institutional failure. And the lesson of Kasur is that unless every survivor is seen, unless every predator is held accountable, unless silence is treated as complicity, we will keep producing more Zainabs. More broken families, more generations living in quiet torment.
Child sexual abuse is not just about an incident. It is about the way that incident fractures a child's entire sense of self. A child is supposed to see adults as protectors. When those adults harm them, the world becomes untrustworthy. Judith Herman writes, "Trauma shatters the sense of safety and predictability that sustains human life. For a child, this shattering is total." The psyche responds by splitting. One part of the child continues daily life, goes to school, plays cricket, recites Quran. The other part hides the pain, dissociates, goes numb. Alice Miller called this the drama of the gifted child, the ability to adapt, conceal suffering, so the adult world remains intact. But that adaptation has a cost. The hidden self doesn't disappear, it festers, shaping the child's body and mind for decades.
The research is clear. CSA alters the brain's stress circuitry. Survivors often live in a state of hypervigilance, always scanning for danger. Their amygdala fires at the slightest trigger. Their cortisol levels remain chronically elevated. This translates into psychosocial struggles: poor concentration in school, impulsivity, depression, suicidal ideation. NGOs like Rozan report children dropping out not because they lack intelligence, but because their nervous system are overwhelmed. The body carries the scars too. Bessel Venter Coates, "The Body Keeps the Score," has shown how trauma manifests physically. Survivors complain of stomach pain, IBS, migraines, autoimmune conditions. Pakistani counselors have seen young survivors with seizures and fainting episodes. The body's attempt to express what the psyche cannot. This is why survivors are often misdiagnosed. Doctors treat the body, but the wound is in the soul.
And then there is intimacy. Survivors grow up confused about touch. Some recoil from affection. Others reenact trauma in their adult relationships. Desire becomes tangled with shame. Love becomes dangerous. 20 years later, it still lives in me. The abuse becomes a ghost in the bed, haunting intimacy for decades. The psychosocial impact extends beyond the individual. Survivors often isolate themselves, mistrusting communities that fail them. They may struggle to parent, either becoming overprotective or emotionally distant. Trauma becomes intergenerational. A society that silences children today will reap a harvest of broken families tomorrow.
Child sexual abuse is not an individual tragedy. It is a public health crisis. It burdens healthcare, education, families, and economies. Survivors are more likely to struggle with employment, addiction, and mental illness. This is why experts like Rubina Sehgal argued that patriarchy's violence is not just moral failure but developmental sabotage. A society that allows its children to be abused at this scale is sabotaging its own future.
When we picture survivors, we picture girls. But nearly half of child sexual abuse survivors in Pakistan are boys. And yet, their pain is ridiculed. A boy survivor told Human Rights Watch, "They laughed when I said it. They told me, 'You're a boy, it can't happen to you.' That ridicule is violence. It teaches boys that disclosure equals emasculation. It tells them that abuse is impossible, and if it happened, it must mean they are weak. And that belief corrodes their sense of masculinity. The psychosocial impact is huge. Boys often channel their pain into anger. Some become violent, repeating cycles of abuse. Others withdraw, ashamed of their supposed weakness. Either way, silence steals their childhood and distorts their adulthood. Patriarchy teaches boys to be protectors. But what happens when they need protection?
For girls, the script is different but equally cruel. Families often force marriage to erase scandal. One Lahore survivor was married off to her abuser's cousin to resolve the matter. Girls are told they are spoiled, ruined, no longer honorable. Their bodies become sites of family shame. The abuse doesn't end when the act ends. It becomes their lifelong punishment, enforced by marriage, gossip, and silence. Girls internalize blame, seeing themselves dirty or broken. Many suffer depression, anxiety, eating disorders. Their education is disrupted, their opportunities are narrowed. Some are killed in honor crimes, others are forced into silence for survival. For many, child sexual abuse is not a chapter, it is a sentence.
And then there are Khwaja Sira and trans children. Already marginalized, they're treated as disposable. Their abuse is dismissed as inevitable. They rarely appear in statistics. Their pain is erased by a culture that refuses to see their existence. For them, disclosure is almost impossible. They are told they are sinful, cursed, and unwanted. Their trauma compounds their social exclusion. The psychosocial effect here is devastating. Many Khwaja Sira youth run away from home, only to find themselves in vulnerable communities where exploitation continues. Their sense of self is constantly under assault. They survive, but in survival mode, not safety.
This is patriarchy's cruel geometry. Boys silenced by masculinity, girls silenced by honor, Khwaja Sira children silenced by erasure. Different mechanisms, same outcome, silence. Until we confront the full spectrum, predators will continue to strive.
It's tempting to think CSA is a Pakistani problem, the result of poverty, corruption, or a lack of education. But the truth is more disturbing. Child sexual abuse, that is CSA, thrives everywhere that power shields predators. The Catholic Church protected priests for decades. Thousands of children across Ireland, the US, and Latin America were violated in institutions meant to teach faith. The silence was global, the complicity institutional. Survivors were gaslit by the communities, much like ours are, silenced by izzat. And it's not only the church. In the US, Larry Nassar, the doctor trusted by America's Olympic gymnasts, abused hundreds of girls under the guise of medical treatment. He was protected by institutions desperate to preserve reputation. In Canada, Indigenous children in residential schools were stripped of their families, culture, and safety. Many were abused by priests and nuns in what is now understood as cultural genocide. When we look abroad, the patterns are familiar. children sacrificed at the altar of silence, reputation, and power.
In South Asia, the parallels are even sharper. In India, cases of madrasa abuse mirrors Pakistan's. One 2019 study found thousands of allegations against Hindu priests and madrasa clerics alike. Bangladesh grapples with widespread child marriage, which is CSA written into law and culture. In Nigeria, Boko Haram weaponized the abduction of schoolgirls, turning children's bodies into instruments of war. In Brazil, gangs and even police have been documented exploiting street children with total impunity. The point isn't to normalize Pakistan's crisis, but to contextualize it. Abuse thrives where institutions protect predators, where families are silenced, where children lack power. This is a global epidemic. The difference is how societies respond, whether with denial or with transformation.
And yet, Pakistan does carry a unique weight, the suffocating grip of izzat. In the West, silence is often institutional, so churches, schools, gymnastics federations. But in Pakistan, silence begins in the home. Families bury cases to protect marriage prospects, to avoid gossip and to save face. Parents hush children not only because of fear but because of shame. So it is a collective denial, dressed up as honor. And the psychosocial result of this is devastating, because survivors learn that their trauma is less important than family reputation. They grow up internalizing shame, doubting their worth, mistrusting intimacy. And when a society tells children that silence equals survival, we raise generations of adults crippled by secrecy.
But here's the crucial lesson. It flourishes in every society that protects predators more than children, which means it can be dismantled. Whether in Pakistan or Peru, India or Ireland, the same principle applies. Break the silence, dismantle the power that shields predators, put survivors at the center.
Silence doesn't just happen, it is engineered. As mentioned, families hush children to protect their honor, and communities pressure parents to compromise. Clerics suppress conversations about sex so children lack the words to name the abuse that is happening to them. Silence is not an accident, it is cultivated, rehearsed, and weaponized. Michel Foucault taught us that power is not only visible in laws, but in what can and cannot be spoken. In Pakistan, children's bodies are sacrificed to uphold this illusion of purity. Think about the message survivors hear. And yes, we use the word survivors over victims because they are not victims, they have survived. So think about the message survivors hear. Don't speak, you'll ruin the family. Don't speak, you'll never marry. Don't speak, people will laugh. Every message trains children to swallow their truth, and this is how shame colonizes the psyche. Because survivors grow up doubting their memories, silencing themselves before anyone else does. And it's not just that no one believes them, they stop believing themselves. And it's these psychosocial effects of enforced silence that are immense. Because survivors who are silenced carry a double trauma, right? The abuse itself and the betrayal of being unheard, or rather rejected. So many develop depression, addictions, and others struggle with trust, intimacy, unable to believe that disclosure will lead to safety even. So silence doesn't just protect the predators, the usually older men with more social power, but in fact it damages survivors.
Silence is political. Landlords protect it to preserve dominance, clerics to maintain authority, politicians to avoid scandal. Every act of silence is an act of power. until we see silence not as absence but as deliberate violence. We will continue to let predators thrive.
So, what needs to change? CSA is not a private issue, it is a national emergency. It is literally an epidemic. To treat it otherwise is to lie to ourselves. So, first, we need child protection units in every district, not token offices, but fully staffed, trauma informed centers with counselors, social workers, and legal teams. Survivors should have shelters to go to, not be forced back into homes where predators live. Therapy must be accessible, not just a privilege for the elite.
And institutions must be held accountable. Police who refuse FIRs must face penalties. Madrassas or schools that cover abuse must be shut down. Media must report responsibly. Avoiding sensationalism, some seeds exist. Since Child Protection Authority, Punjab's Safe City Authority alerts. But they are underfunded, fragmented, inconsistent. Without political will, they remain cosmetic.
And culturally, we must dismantle honor as an excuse. Our family reputation cannot outweigh children's lives. Communities must rally around survivors, not the predators. Conversations about sexuality must be normalized, and we must teach children safe and unsafe touch, good and bad touch. Not because we are corrupting them, but because we are protecting them. Ignorance has never kept us safe. The psychosocial healing requires more than laws. Survivors need to be believed. They need spaces to speak without shame. They need schools that understand trauma and workplaces that allow flexibility and partners who offer patience. Healing is not only psychological, it is social.
And Islam must be reclaimed from silence. The Quran commands, "Do not betray the trust placed in you." The Prophet warned that betraying those who depend on you is among the gravest sins. Protecting children is not Western, it is Islamic. To hush survivors in the name of honor is to betray both our children and our faith.
This is not marginal, it is central. If we cannot protect our children, what claim do we have to morality, religion, humanity? Every silenced child is a collective failure. Every predator protected is a betrayal. When we pray, when we fast, and when we speak of justice but hush and silence our children, our worship is hollow and meaningless.
A society that shields predators is at war with its own children. Silence is complicity. Complicity is violence. To say nothing, to do nothing, is to take the predator's side.
The revolution we need is truth. Survivors' voices must outweigh their shame. Silence must be broken in homes, schools, mosques, and courts.
If you are listening, you are implicated. Silence is not neutral. Every time we hush, every time we protect honor over justice, we empower predators. The question is simple: whose side are you on? The children or the silence?
Break the silence, believe survivors, protect children, speak even when it is uncomfortable, because silence kills.
And justice begins the moment we refuse to look away. For those listening who want to act, we also mention some of the resources: the Sahil Helpline, Madadgaar Helpline, Rozan War Against Rape, Aangan Trust, and RAINN in the US.
So don't stop listening. Call, share, volunteer, speak, protect. That is how silence is broken.